No.
No, follow
I
the
tried it, yeah.
example.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Yeah.
we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. This is Nika. And if it's not clear already, Nika and I are basically best friends. Nika and I worked together at Moody's Analytics. Nika is still there because she's not a quitter. And yeah, she's going to talk to us today. She was the brilliant mind behind our GitHub workflow. And she's going to teach us all about it. And I think also just kind of some reflections on your first year. Is that what you have for us?
Yeah. And since there's like not that many of us, I would love to hear a little bit about what your guys' experience with Git is, and then also we can maybe make the last bit more conversational, and you guys just ask me questions about my first year, and I can sort of just talk about like the main things that my main takeaways, but it can really be a conversation.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that. Good
so
idea.
yeah, does anyone have like any like what is everyone's sort of experience with Git? It's okay if you have like before going into boot camp, I really not used like any sort of Git workflow. I hadn't really used GitHub before, so just to get a sense of where everyone's at. Or you could put it in the notes in as a comment. No pressure.
I always get confused between the difference between Git and GitHub.
Great
Is
question.
Yeah,
yeah. Like I've
it's a
used
suit
GitHub
is
before
yeah.
and like the worked with other people and pulled other branches and all that, but like is there a huge difference?
Yeah, so Git is the underlying system, right? But then GitHub uses Git. And there's also GitLab. Yeah. Okay, no pressure. We'll just go to the oh, okay, cool. Awesome.
Yay, branches.
Yeah. Okay, then I'll get started then. We'll talk a little bit. I think that this is okay if I share my screen really quickly, Callie.
Of course. We're a
Do,
pretty
do,
chill
do.
bunch.
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Ah, every single
How could you?
time. Christine, this is your one job. I'm just kidding. This is not Christine's job at all. Anyway, settings. Where did settings go? All right, there you go. You should be good now.
Perfect. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess Callie sort of introduced me. So I'll I'll skip that part and we'll just get into it. So the basics. It's not letting me do this. Okay, so fundamentals. How do we collaborate effectively with many developers on the same project? So I think one important thing is that we want a single source of truth, right? Places where we know that all the changes have been reviewed and validated. And so this is why it's not great practice. I mean, it sometimes happens, but it's not great practice to work on the main branch, right? So that's why we have something called feature branches. So that's where we branch from from main, make our feature branches, and merge those changes back into main after review. And I think before we get into this, when I was making these personal projects, similar to what you guys are doing, I think at the beginning, I felt like I didn't really need to adhere to any kind of system because I was just doing it on my own. But I think the more you practice and the more comfortable you get, the more seamlessly you'll fit into a more collaborative professional environment. And so like it might seem unnecessary, but I think it's really great. And as you're developing these personal projects, you might want to come back to them later when you have like better skills, better abilities. And so like how are you going to know what you were doing, what you meant to do when you did something? And I think that's when commits come in and these Git workflows come in. So I think that even making PRs might be a little silly, but it'll be helpful, I think, in the long run. And especially as you guys work together, just try to like practice it as much as possible and, you know, try to emulate as much as you can a professional working environment. I think that would be really helpful. Um, okay. So this is an example, this is a little of the the feature branch workflow. So this main represents our main branch with the single source of truth, as we discussed. So that's, you know, where we feel like that what has been there has been reviewed by us, gone through all of our validations, or we have testing, if we have CI/CD, it's gone through that. So as you can see, someone has branched from there to create their feature, made their changes, and then branch and merge back into main. And then the same is true for this bug fix and description, and then back into main. So we'll get more into it in terms of local development, and what that actually means. So let's say you get a ticket, right? A task for you to do. You're gonna, you know, try to figure out what you want to do, think of your implementation, do whatever research notes you need to, and then you create a branch from main. And in terms of naming your branch, I think that that can kind of depend on what company you work at, like what organization, but just something descriptive and identifiable. Maybe it has your initials, maybe it has a ticket number, but just make sure it's clear. And then you want to commit and pull often. This is a huge thing because I think, I don't know if you guys have gotten some dreaded merge conflicts, but those were really scary to me when I started. And like the best way to avoid that sort of situation, I mean, merge conflicts will happen. It's, you know, it will happen, but just commit and pull often, I think is a big thing. Like as soon as, you know, make sure that you're pulling all the time. And I think commits are super helpful in terms of, you know, keeping track of what you're doing and pushing, committing and pushing. I think it's also for transparency of what you're doing, which becomes incredibly important in like a work environment for visibility. Um, and then something else that you can do is set up auto linting. I don't know if you guys have set up like linting on any of your projects, but they can be really cool in terms of setting up like a fundamental sort of like a shared style that you guys are all using, you know, tab spaces, that whole debate. So that can be really helpful. And then what people have different preferences and that will happen. But one thing is to just see if your team has a style, or you guys, as you're working on projects, you can talk about what kinds of things you want to do and create like a shared style guide and have that set up automatically, either with commit hooks or with on save, which is something that you can set up on VS Code, which is really nice. Like just on save changes. Yeah, that's that for local development. I had one more thing. Oh, well, so another thing that I think I was kind of prone to do when I was starting was just it was one step where instead of having feature branches, I would just have like I would say like NW, my initials, dev, and then I would just keep using that. I'd keep pulling and pushing on that and making PRs. Can anyone think of reasons why maybe that's not best practice?
Or like
And
the
just maybe, yeah, maybe just something to think about. If you don't have an answer now, that's okay, but or put in the chat.
Dan. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, Nika. I think people aren't as not many people are here because I think I did the wrong link on LinkedIn or something.
Oh,
Where did I put
is
the
that,
wrong link, Kat?
should I mean, I guess it's okay. Should I do a little
I
start
think
over or just keep going?
you're probably fine to keep going. Okay, I'm just gonna go switch the event on LinkedIn just in case, because that's the second person who's told me. My bad. Sorry, guys. I'm really bad at this.
Okay.
Nika.
Yeah, of course. So I think that like, yeah, I think exactly what Callie is saying long term is really helpful. I think there's like the most common thing is like, what if you want to make a different change while you have your other change? Can't really do both on the same. Which are you going to do two different PRs for two different issues? What if one is ready, one isn't ready? How will you know what changes, what the change like was from a long-term perspective? I think also you kind of want branches to sort of follow logical units, and they sort of do with features and bugs, but you want it so that like you might not have multiple changes on the same, like you might have, if it's not descriptive, you might not know what changes you've made on that branch, and maybe you didn't add them, and so you're adding sort of changes that you didn't mean to add that were previously on that dev branch. It just can get a little messy and not as organized. I don't know, Callie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah,
Oh,
like
you're
I
in the
feel like it.
midst of a task too.
Yeah, and like when you're looking back, if you like there's been times where I'm like, oh, what was that one line of code that I wrote that I want to remember I was working on this? And if you like have your features set out, you can easily go back to it. Um, so yeah, I like to look at it in terms of like the whole history and see like where I was at each one. With coding with Cal, especially because I like recorded videos at each different part of my code. So then it was really helpful that I had a branch for each one. So if I ever wanted to re-record those videos, I could go
Yeah,
back to like the branch right before I started, pull a new branch off of that, and then record from that moment. Not everybody's going to record while they code, but like that's a great use case that I didn't really think of
that
before.
that's such a good point. And if you want to like look at when a bug was introduced or something like that, you just want to like go back to a moment of time. The branch is just super helpful for that. The branch system. I mean that you also generally like a lot of people will delete their branches, but I think it can be very helpful. Um, yeah, okay. Okay, so in terms of PR creation, so when you make a pull request, right? I think something that is not done that often is opening it early. So, pushing very early on before you're ready to actually have that PR reviewed. But this is something that can be really helpful in terms of visibility of what you're working on. Um, so you just know that, okay, that person is tackling this task now and they're working on that PR and it's open and it'll be ready to review soon. And then in terms of creating good PR descriptions, there's a lot of like really important details that you could have. A lot of people like to have standardized forms. So maybe for CI/CD checks, so like has it passed the test? Did it successfully deploy in a sandbox environment or things like that? And has it been tested locally? Sort of things like that. Again, you might refer back to the ticket, but you just really want people who are looking at this PR in the future to be conscious of why this change was made and what the change is. Hi, Savannah. Um, and I think that one thing that's really helpful to think about is like you're not making a lot of this for right now. This is for you in 6 months when you're like, what did I do this for? Or you're doing it for a different developer in 6 months when you've left to get a better job and you're like, and they're like, what was this person doing here and why did they do this? So I think that that's just like a little bit more of the context, right? Um, and then also, I think you want to make sure that people are able to give you a good review. So we're going to add as much context, as much notes, as much diagrams, links to tickets as we can to help those reviewers. Okay, so PR sizes. So we want to try to keep PRs pretty small, right? And I think one thing is helpful to do is again think of that logical unit. You might hopefully the feature is I think that it's not always going to be perfect in this way. Like it's not going to fit into nice little boxes, but you want it to at least somewhat be sort of thematically, tied. And I think ideally PRs are a day's worth of dev work. And again, not a hard and fast rule. It's just like sort of what is ideally, right? Oh, that's typo. But larger PRs are harder to review with more conflicts. Um, And so it's just like, I think, have you ever gotten something really, really long to edit and you just sort of like, maybe it's like, you get like an essay to edit or anything, and it's just super long. And you write really, really good edits for like the first couple of pages, and then you sort of like stop making edits. I think that this is, you can see this meme, I think 10 lines of code, 10 issues. You send like a really short PR, people will really get into the weeds and just be like, but if you have a huge block of code, you really won't get many comments because it's really hard to delve into that. And I think people are just like, people will look at it and just not really want to engage with it as much. I think it's just about making sure that people can actually give a good review and understand it, and it won't take too much time for them to do so. Okay. Okay, and then this is be nice, review a PR. Okay. We insert a little meme here. I think, you know, I think that sometimes it can be hard to get people to make to review your PR. It's just like people are doing other things, but I think that, if you review people's PR, they'll review your PRs. So just be nice. I think it sucks to like have changes and just have been waiting for a PR for like days or for a review for days. So I think that this is just, just,
Hey,
a
Nika.
nice thing to do. Yeah.
So something I've noticed is when people are new or maybe more junior, they don't review a lot of PRs or they feel nervous too. What's kind of like your advice on like, should you review a PR if you're junior? What can you add to the conversation?
Yeah. That's a great point because I've definitely felt that before. I think like first of all, I think you can definitely still review a PR. I mean, I think that a lot of these require multiple PRs, but like maybe if it's something that's completely out of your wheelhouse and something that you aren't familiar with, then you might not be the best person to review it, right? I think that, but if it's something that you do feel reasonably comfortable with, but you're just sort of new and you're a little nervous, I think it's always okay to look at it and, see if you see anything. But that's a great question. And I think it's something that I also like was a little bit nervous about. But I think, yeah, it's a good question. What have you found about that, Callie?
I actually felt like Danielle, who was like a rotational engineer in our when I was at Moody's, and so she came in for like 6 months on our team and then left. She would
Yeah,
give me my best code reviews because she was ruthless. So she'd be like, Callie, there's a console
yeah,
log in here, reject. Whereas like some of the other engineers who'd been on the team for a while or more senior would just kind of be like, "Nah, Callie knows what she's doing," which was
yeah.
slide it through, So like I think everybody has something to offer or something that they can add a thought to. And sometimes when you're just learning something too, like something will stick out more than maybe like if so I think
Yeah.
everyone should review, and I think it's hard if only a few people on the team are reviewing because then it feels like your entire job is reviewing PRs. And so if like
Mhm.
it spreads the load, it's like everybody feels better about it.
100%. And I think I saw Igor, apologies if I'm not saying that correctly, but I saw your comment like reviewing other developers' PRs improves your code reading skills. I think that's 100% correct. And I also what I like to do, I think whenever you're lucky enough to get like a tech lead or a senior engineer's review on your PRs, that's amazing. I also like kind of looking at their reviews of other people's code because I learn a lot too from that of like what the things that they've highlighted, and just like learning how to give a good review is also important. um yeah, so I completely agree. I think just like trying to understand other people's code is so helpful. So yeah. um okay, yeah, questions.
Yeah, hi, hi, Nika.
Hi.
My name is Jay. Uh, Recently I found out that like, say you have a main branch and you branch out to another branch, and then you make some commits over in your local branch, like one, two, say two, three, four. That's the commit. And then you push it to GitHub. You push it to a branch in GitHub called say fruit. And then you request a pull request um to the master. I found out that it doesn't just merge like the latest branch, say four is the latest branch. It doesn't just merge four. It actually, I think it merged every single uh commit in the fruit, like two, three, four, all into master. Did I just did something wrong or
So you made 4 commits and they all merged when you made a pull request to master, all those commits were in. I'm not sure I understand the
so
question.
the goal here is I'm trying to only commit four and to master, but it ended up commit two, commit three, commit four, all got merged into to master. Like if you click on commit history on master,
Yeah.
um it all shows up there.
Yeah, so you might have to then specify which commits you want to be pushed, because if you commit something and you push it, then that's what's saved on your branch, right? So if you want to specifically have different commits, like pick and choose different commits, then that's going to require special uh like ways of like either like deleting commits or getting rid of those commits or creating a new branch based off a commit. It's just sort of more complex in that way. It's like you've saved, it's almost like if you think about like it, yeah. If you think about something like a Google Doc, right? And you think about that as a Git system, every time that you type something, right, it's
Yeah.
pushing and committing that. So if you type 1, 2, 3, 4, those are committed, and then you want to merge that, all 4 of those commits are merged, right? So you have to sort of have special behavior to just have the 4 merged. I don't know if that makes sense
Why
or
don't you want 1, 2, and 3 is my question. Because 4 is where
Um
you're at currently, so that your
yeah.
current status is what's going to end up in master. But like, did something
sure.
bad happen in 1, 2, and 3 that you
No,
don't want it there?
no, not necessarily, but my thought process was that maybe four, like four is I don't know. The idea is to reduce the amount of commits that is on your master branch.
If you want that,
Um,
you can do something called a squash and merge,
Yes.
which will just put all the commits, like all the descriptions of the commits into one commit. So that could be helpful. But I think maybe the commits are just moments in time, right? Of your saved work.
mm,
It's just like you pressing save to get like save right now. And then like you keep coding. Okay, save right now and keep coding, right? It's not those first 2 saves. It's like a marker of like, this is all the times I saved. But like your 4th commit is the only one that's like your most recent code, and that's what's getting merged. It's
Yeah.
just showing the history of like how you got there. So unless you have
yeah.
something bad that you don't want, like for example, maybe you committed an API key and you don't want that, and that was supposed to be in your env
Yeah.
file, but you forgot to add that to your git ignore, then you would want to go like scrub your commit history to get rid of that env file from every single commit. So like, that would be a reason, but like just it's like it's normal that you would see all of your commits, and you want to be able to see your commits so that way if you introduce a bug or something you can go back
Mm.
to a previous version.
Oh, okay. I see. I thought that I did something wrong.
No, you that's what it's supposed to look like.
Oh, I see.
It's
Okay.
the right
Okay. Thank you.
behavior. In fact, if you're missing a commit, then that's kind of scary. You should look into why you're missing a
Yeah.
commit.
I'm like, what shady stuff are you coding in the middle
Yeah.
here? Okay, any more questions for Nika?
I
We've
have a
got time.
question.
Yes, go for
Uh,
it.
what's the difference between a rollback and a rebase?
It's a really good question that I don't really know. Um, yeah, but I bet Google has some very good
Yeah,
very
I was
good
like, let's just
answers
Google
for
it.
you. Yeah, Google it.
All right, rollback versus rebase. Well, okay, I think this is going to be not fun as we read through Stack Overflow. So let's go on to the next question, but maybe we'll get to an answer.
All good.
You said that you recommended opening pull requests early, like before you were ready for them.
Yeah,
How would you indicate that you were ready for it to be reviewed, and what would happen if it was approved before you were ready?
that's a great question. I think that I only will, there can be pull requests, but unless they specifically ask for reviewers, I would assume that it wasn't being reviewed. But you could maybe say in the description, not ready, if that was a concern. But I think most people know not to review a PR that hasn't like been asked for a review. But that's a great point. I think that that could cause some confusion if it wasn't like if you didn't specify that it was ready yet.
You're also meeting with your dev team like almost every day, and like you probably have Slack open all day too. So I don't think I've ever put up a PR without also slacking and saying like, hey, I have a PR, can someone review? Or like, hey, this PR is not ready, or like, putting up a PR so that way I can like show you guys where I'm at, but like don't approve it yet. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna be talking throughout the day. You have stand up where you can say where you're at. Sort of a thing. But I also have never, I'm a little bit nervous to put up my PRs when I'm still working on them personally.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What are like best practices, I guess, for commit messages? Like, is there like a system or does it vary based on where you are? Or how do you?
Yeah. That's a really great question because a lot of people are like very opinionated about that. And I know like the Google team has a set of like uh best practices for commits where they sort of like even label the commit of like what you've done. Is it a fix? Is it like, I think that there's like different ways that you can make commits, but I think like why have you made this change and what have you done is really helpful. And I think just being descriptive. But a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions, and I'll send Callie that link about the Google the Angular team um commit history. But yeah, I don't know. What have you guys found to be the best when you see a commit that helps you like understand what a developer is doing? What do you think makes a good commit message?
I'd say definitely descriptive. But also I like to keep mine kind of short, but I don't know if that like takes away from the description because of the
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a matter of personal preference, right? Like you don't want to make an essay, but I think
right.
whatever keeps helps you commit often. Because I think that like I definitely fall into this where I get really into something and I don't commit. But I think if you just have a system of in place that you're committing often, and if that's just keeping them short, that's great. One thing also that I don't use, but people I know there's like AI generated commits that you can use. It's like a tool that I forget the name of, but I can send it to Callie when I can look it up. But I mean, maybe right now is not the best time as you guys try to like maybe if you're just still working on writing commit messages. But I think that's a super cool tool to utilize in terms of making sure that you're committing often. I think that sounds like a great tool to use.
Oh, totally. Yeah, share the link and I'll share it with the Slack group. I would say if you feel like you're writing an essay when you commit that you haven't been committing frequently enough, because like you
Yeah.
should be able to like one thing, like I did this next.
Yeah. I
And
think
light
going
that
back,
GitHub tree up, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, going back to the logical unit idea of like this is the thing I did and like tie it up with a commit, you know?
So how often would you say to commit? Like after every feature or like every maybe file change?
I think file change would it just really depends on the work you're doing. I think like for me, I like to tie it to the thematic, like what I've just the like the different things that I want to do, like the different subtasks. And those can be any kind of, size. But yeah, just I think different tasks. It's hard to like, yeah, it's hard to, I think, describe what it would be, but that, yeah.
Like if you're making a sign up form, right? Maybe making like the React component with like the login and password. So sign in form. I would make that React component and make the input and make the input for the login and for the password and then the submit button. And then maybe I would commit and be like setup form. And then I would keep working. Maybe then I would do like validation and then I do added validation, added state to save things, that sort of thing. I
Yeah.
mean, that would be best
100%, yeah.
practice. In real life,
Yeah.
I probably would like forget to commit and then be like,
Yeah.
oh, set up form and did this and something else that I think I forgot, or try it again if I'm deploying. Try one more time. Please work. Don't
Yeah.
do that though.
Um,
I have another
oh,
question.
yeah.
So, what would you typically do, Nika, if you mess up? Um, like say if you make a commit and make few commits, and then you realize you messed up. How would you roll it back?
Yeah, but why would you need to roll it back unless you committed something that was like unsafe or proprietary?
Um,
It's okay to have a bug in your feature. That's so okay. That's the point of the feature branch is like it's untested. I mean, it's not the point. Like you probably shouldn't willingly have a bug, but the point is that it's, yeah, exactly. It's your code that hasn't been reviewed, it hasn't gone through validation. So if you have a bug, you just, it hasn't been put, you can just make another commit, fix bug. That's
oh,
totally okay. Yeah.
uh,
It's not set in stone because you have this
hmm.
whole other branch where the like as we're saying I know a lot of people missed the beginning, but this idea of the source of truth of the main. So you're still not attached to that, right? You're still on your own branch.
Yeah, yeah. I typically what I would do is that if I like uh, if I typically when I've finished like building a certain feature and it works, I'll commit. And then over here I mess up. I'll probably scrap everything and then and then no, if I really can't fix the bug, I'll scrap it and then go back to the previous commit.
Oh,
And then
Yeah, that's
okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
that's
that's
smart.
fine.
Yeah. That's totally
Yeah.
smart. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
no, that
But
makes a
just
lot of
to
sense.
clarify, if
Yeah.
you are able to fix it, just fix it and commit again.
Yeah, 100%.
Like if you break it, that's like the benefit of Git. Like, yay, Git, you saved when it was working, so now I can just go back to when it's working. But
Yeah.
like if you can fix it, just fix and then commit again, and then you don't have to redo work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But what I'm asking is what are the git command that you used to go back to the previous working commits? I usually use
Yeah,
check out.
well, Git checkout works for branches. So
So
that's
that would
different.
get rid of
That's
all of your current things. I mean, if you haven't committed since, but say you've committed your bug, you can reset your head.
Yeah. And you can go back to certain commits as well. So all those things are possible. I think, yeah. Yeah.
I feel like we might need
Mm.
to do like a Git like demo. Like I'm not putting you on
Yeah,
the
that
spot to do one now, but that might be a good follow-up is to like
yeah.
do a little like fake project and we can kind of like show like, oh, I messed up. What would I do? Would that be helpful,
Yeah.
guys?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
so.
A lot of
I think
these
also
things.
just like
Oh, sorry,
sorry.
Nika, go ahead.
Also just like practicing merge, like how to deal with merge conflicts, not like, resolving them. I think that's always good. And just practicing all of this is really helpful because you're gonna make some bad mistakes in the beginning, and that's totally okay. Yeah. Yeah, Stash is great. Love Stash. Um, and then I'm not sure how much time we have. Would you guys rather talk about this a little bit more or talk a little bit about like the first year as a dev? Just any questions you have?
Yeah, and can people ask at all about boot camp or like
Mm-hmm.
job search and stuff like that?
Yeah, anything, anything.
All right. So yeah, floor is open.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of information from Callie, but could you just say how you kind of got into like web or engineering development?
Yeah, of course. So I did do some engineering in college, but I was kind of like more of like a history nerd. So then I did that. But I think in work I was just really enjoying. I also did some data analytics. So I had one of my first jobs out of college was I was doing like analytics. And so I was just running a bunch of scripts. And then I built a tool that could I basically built this tool that could automate running all these scripts and turning them into reports. And that was the most fun I had in the job by far. So I was like, maybe I need to be doing this as a job. So then I did Hack Reactor, which I did with Callie, the time at Callie. Um, and yeah, I think it was great. And I worked for the boot camp a little bit after that, and then I went to Moody's. Yeah.
I have,
Yeah.
I was going to ask too, that I'm just starting to get into Git actions, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, how would you, I think that's like the CI/CD setup. Like, how would I kind of like, what does it look like? I have no idea. That's totally like a new area for me. And so is this what we're going to be kind of doing, Kelly? Like setting stuff like with Git actions up for our next,
Yeah,
uh,
towards the end for sure. We're starting with like networking and AWS and going like super small, but that is going to be like the end culmination, yes, is setting up GitHub Actions and being able to deploy by pushing a commit. But
I guess.
Nika, what does that look like at work? Sorry, Gloria, you can continue your
Yeah,
question
no,
too.
that's kind of what I was going to ask. Like, how do you start diving into that, and what are some of the things that it can do?
Yeah. I mean, it's super nice because I think you can have your CI/CD pipeline within GitHub and you can run your checks like as soon as you push something. And I think that's like awesome. Actually, Callie set up a lot of ours at our company. Um, But this sort of just means that you can deploy from GitHub. And after you have something approved or have something pushed to a different branch, then you can just deploy it directly. But I think it definitely, yeah, I don't know. I think that that's a great question for Callie too, as you move on, because she's a DevOps queen.
I will say most companies, like if you're going in as a junior, like that's not really something that you're gonna have to set up unless you specifically get a DevOps or like SRE job. So I would say like your goal would be to be familiar enough with like all of these concepts that like you could hop in and maybe debug if there's something that's like going wrong. Or like you would be able to like ask knowledgeable questions to your tech lead about how they're doing something and take like small tickets. But I would be very surprised if you like hopped in and somebody was like, set up a CI/CD pipeline for us. So yeah, I would just say be familiar enough to talk about it in interviews and talk like ask your like senior members of the team how their setup works, because every team's going to be set up different. Like at Moody's, it was one way, and then I go to HashiCorp and like things that were like totally normal at Moody's, they're like, oh my gosh, no, you know what I mean? So like everybody just has like an opinion on how to do it, and they're going to do it differently. And like unless you're at a startup, it's going to be set up for you, and it's just going to be like learning how to integrate into that system, do small changes here and there.
Oh, I was wondering, like, to set it up on our own, like GitHub, like, can you do that, or is it, yeah, okay,
Yep, yep.
just for practice or for, to try it out and for fun.
Yeah, definitely. There's like a lot of places where you can actually just grab like a lot of the code and then like edit it for how you need as well. And then like Nika was saying, like it doesn't have to just be for deploying. So it could be about like checking for linting. It could be automatically running your spec tests or end-to-end tests for you, checking like formatting, and stuff like that, and seeing like what files are in what folders. So like you could do anything you really wanted. It would just be like any task you want to automate when you like push or merge or something like that is what GitHub Actions can do. It's deployment's just one of them.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I have like, I feel like two important tips that I think are like the things in all those things that help me the most. So in terms of okay, it will be more like three things. Apologies. But I think for job searching, the market is not great right now. And like that is just like a little bit and how do you distinguish yourself? I think as people who are coming from non-traditional backgrounds, I think there are people who will definitely give you a chance. And like that will definitely happen and it's definitely possible. But you need to make sure that your like resume is on the top. So I really think just networking as much as possible is huge. So I think I went to like a small liberal arts school. So I was able to really network with those people. And that was like all of my interviews came from referrals and knowing people. And I had a pretty good rate of interviewing for people in our boot camp. And so I know not everyone had that kind of like nice liberal arts environment, but any kind of community that you felt like you were a part of, because I think sometimes the boot camp community is so big that maybe people might not want to take, I think that there's mixed results with talking to people from boot camps. I think that might be a good option, but also maybe try to look a little bit smaller, maybe people who went to your high school, people that maybe were like in a club with you or you do something with, those little things of connection I think are really big and might make the difference in someone responding to you on LinkedIn. I just think that that's super, super helpful. And I think a lot of people are like embarrassed or don't want to ask things of people, but I think that it's just so huge and like it just will really make the difference for you not having to send hundreds of applications without getting a response. And then secondly, I think remember why you love what you're doing, or like hopefully you do. Remember, like I think for me, a big part of my love for this was just that I was always getting to learn and keep learning, right? Like there's so much and you're just always like there's always more to learn. And if you just keep that mentality that you're growing and like any job that you're there to learn and try to soak up as much as possible. I think that that can really help you move forward and progress in your career as well. I think that people forget it and forget that that's like what they wanted about it. And maybe you just get a little bit like, I think Callie does a great job of that, just like learning all the time and making it fun for yourself. And that will make you a great engineer, I think. And then lastly, when you do get that job offer, I think I know that you guys had a speaker about imposter syndrome, correct? So I think that will happen, of course. Not even coming from a non-traditional background, even from a traditional background, you're gonna have imposter syndrome. There's gonna be people that have been coding since they're 10 and like just, it seems like they know everything. And I think might be intimidating to ask the questions that you want to ask because you might feel like they're not good enough or that they will show some sort of misunderstanding that you have. But it's in fact good for them to show that misunderstanding because then they can actually meet you where you are, right? Like how can they know what you don't get if you're not sharing that with them? And it's so much better to ask those stupid questions early on. You're like 2 years in the job and you actually don't understand
Hi,
something.
Nika.
Like, oh,
Hi.
hi.
Sorry. Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I've been connecting with people on LinkedIn the past few
Mm-hmm.
weeks. What I found is that I've been connecting 7 pages of people from Microsoft and 10 pages of people from my college that I go to. What I found out is that you have about 5% chances of people from Microsoft connecting with you, but you have up to 80% chances of people that go to the same school as you. In this case, John Jay to connect with you, and and I found out a lot of people from my school are actually willing to help you. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
yeah, they're very sweet. They helped me to review my resume as well.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think that people like helping people, right? Like I mean it's obviously like not always the case, but I think
Mhm.
anytime you can like make that personal connection with people, like I do think there's like one layer of like I think people are like want to help people, but then it's just sort of like you might have an inbox flooded with people that you don't know and you don't really want to take a time to talk to them. But maybe there's that just one layer that will make them do that. And it's just like I think that use whatever you can, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I feels like talking to the same people that I go to school with. It feels like it make me feel make me feels like go back to school again. That's how it feels like.
Oh, like meeting new people.
No, like it's like I like graduate from college, right? If I talk to people from John Jay, it feels like I'm going back to John Jay again. That's how it feels like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You guys want to hear something funny about asking dumb questions? So
Yeah.
I started work, right? And last week they were telling me, like, okay, we need you to make like a front end that does this. And they started talking about authentication and they kept saying this word. And I was like, I have no idea what they're saying, but I feel like I'm supposed to be like a full stack dev. So like I can't say I don't know what they're talking about. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like the next day they're like, okay, Callie, so like, can you get started on this auth work? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, to be honest, though, I usually use a JWT. And they're like, yeah, that's what we were saying yesterday. Apparently, you could say JWT or you can say JOT. And so apparently they were just pronouncing it differently. And I had
Shocking.
no idea. And so I was like thinking, like, what is this new thing? I've never used this before. And yeah, apparently in the Java world, people just say it differently, but it's still just like a access token. And it wasn't this fancy magical thing. And I really could have avoided a lot of imposter syndrome and stress if I would have just been like, hey guys, I don't know what that word you're using is. Can you please explain it? So yes, Nika, you were very correct. Just ask the question. You won't sound dumb. You'll sound more dumb when you say that. Wait, but I usually use this thing. And you're talking about the
Yeah.
same thing.
One more question, one more question, Nika. Um.
Yeah.
Uh. So have you Nika, have you been studying AI lately? Because I feels like learning AI and becoming an AI engineer is like learning HTML and CSS and JavaScript back in the early 2000. Um, so have you done that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, I haven't like in terms of like ML engineering, I haven't really gotten into that. But I do use Copilot a lot. I think it's really helpful to me for a host of different things. I think you can really ask it questions. You can like ask it to review your code. Like, can you make this code more concise? Can you look at any possible bugs that this code might have? Like little things that can just really help your process and make you faster. I think it's a tool, right? Like everything else. So I think, and I love Copilot. And then we also have like an internal tool that's basically ChatGPT, but like, so, um, and I use that just to ask questions as well. So that's very nice. Yeah, for new code bases, yeah, 100%. I think it's just like yeah, something super helpful. You should definitely be using it. And I mean, I think I tried to get it to help me to write cover letters and resume stuff. That was a little, I mean, sometimes it was helpful, but I do feel like it really just does sound like ChatGPT. But you can use that as a starting point, I think.
Yeah. Mhm.
Can I recommend one AI tool?
Yeah.
This is if you want to become a better software developer or a software engineer, go purchase GPT-4. It's only $20 a month, and you can just ask it as many questions as you want. It's trained on, I think, significantly more parameters, and you'll get insane feedback for,
Yeah.
about your code. If you have project requirements you want to put in, and ask ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, is this correct? You'll get back such good output. Like, I think it's worth to invest, and you'll learn a lot. You'll definitely
Yeah.
learn a lot. And it's one of the tools that I use. I mean, just for $20, I get to talk to, um, well, I get to use AI, utilize AI, and I get to, I get feedback, and I get like my coding ability is getting sharper just by using AI. I'm starting to learn what the right questions to ask. So it's definitely worth the investment.
100%. Well, so I don't purchase it now because I get it through work, but I had the free trial and it was GPT-4 is a lot better. So if that's something that you want to or can invest in, might be a good idea. I think another tool I like is Warp, which is like an AI terminal. So it can help you with some of like your command line stuff and you can ask it questions. It's pretty cool. Um, yeah. Sadly, we're not allowed to use that at work, but you probably like definitely for your personal development, personal dev work, it's great.
I feel like you said you had three things and then we all interrupted you after two. Do you remember your third thing? Or did I get that wrong?
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah, I don't know.
networking, then ask questions. Oh, always learn, right? So that was
Always learn. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, three. It was three. Yeah. But any
Yay.
other questions? Like also feel free to like connect with me on LinkedIn. Um, yeah. Yeah, I think you know, this is an exciting time. Just keep learning, keep diving into it. And I think like also I mean I like are you guys currently like looking for jobs or are you guys more like trying to develop skills right now?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Well, I think just keep developing those skills because I think sometimes, yeah, networking is great. I think networking is really good. I think I got into phases where I was just like my main focus was searching for jobs all the time. And you kind of like you forget what you're doing this for, what you want this to be for, and then also like you might have a take home and then you haven't looked at React in like a month and then yeah, like all these different things, I think that you just keep coding, do something fun with your friends, make a cool app about something that you love on the side. I think that those things are always good. And you're always in every interview I had, and Callie, maybe you're always gonna get one of those questions of like, talk about like a problem that you've faced, or talk like a technical problem or something that you worked on that you're really proud of. Those kinds of questions are gonna just be every interview that you have. And so having these sort of projects that you work on with people, super important to draw on for those conversations. Yeah.
Well, Nika, thank you so much for joining us. This was really
Yeah, of
helpful.
course.
I always love a good Git workflow chat, and now I feel like I've roped you into doing a little workshop on Git with me. But yeah, also everybody deploy in public cohort challenge thing, whatever we're calling it, starts pretty soon. I have the first 3 weeks. Excuse my child who's not sleeping, but yes, I have the first 3 weeks charted out. I think it's going to be super fun. And if you haven't signed up, do so now. But anyways, thank you again, Nika, and I will see everybody next week.
Thank you, Nika.